on the May 2025 What's Neat.
So this month we continue with layout construction, where I'm adding a great deal to my layout. From the scenery area of this corner all the way from where I'm standing midway through the entire basement, actually, I am completely rebuilding a lot of the layout, making it more functional, you might say. So you will see me continue as we build on the layout this month. The What's Neat show is sponsored by Lombard Hobbies, your value hobby shop for over 40 years of modelers helping modelers. Big inventory, value pricing, fast shipping, and great service. And by Broadway Limited Imports, the cutting-edge leader in model trains. Check out their website at broadway-limited.com. And by Bachmann Trains. Now that's the way to run a railroad. Check out their website at bachmanntrains.com. And thank you for helping us support the best hobby in the world. This is What's Neat for May 2025. I'm your host, Ken Patterson, and this month we've got a really good show. I say that all the time. In this show this month, I share with you how I did an amazing photo shoot for Bachmann Industries, shooting their 2025 cover. Came out really decent. I walk you through the entire process of how I went through all of that. Also this month, we continue with layout construction, where I'm adding a great deal to my layout. From the scenery area of this corner all the way from where I'm standing midway through the entire basement, actually, I am completely rebuilding a lot of the layout, making it more functional, you might say. So you will see me continue as we build on the layout this month. Now I'm to the point of almost laying track, and I still don't even know what type of turnouts I'm going to use yet. I've got one of Oak Hill Model Railroad Track Supplies turnouts that Jeff Otto built. I've got a couple Wathers turnouts, some old Shinohara turnouts laying here. And I'm not really sure even what I'm going to use yet. I know I want number 8s or number 10s, high-speed, long run-throughs, and I also know I want live frogs. In the old days, Shinohara, it was so super simple to get what you wanted. So I'm checking out all the brands. I might even hand lay, I'm not sure. Also this month, I've got a lot of beautiful Broadway Limited locomotives here on the layout. I haven't had the chance to even run these absolutely gorgeous locomotives with the feed water heaters on the front. I did outdoor photography on some of these, and I'm pretty sure I've shown these off on the show in the past. But Broadway Limited stuff, you know, there's a lot of stock still in their warehouse available, and also Lombard Hobbies. The last time I was up there, they had hundreds. I mean, there was a glass case full of Broadway Limited steam engines, and it was beautiful. You talk about candy in a glass case. That's the way I looked at it. Also, I've got about 280 feet of microengineering Code 83 Trek here. I know I'm going to use microengineering track on this layout. So microengineering is up and running. They are back in full production. I understand they're making their ladder track system right now. So rock and roll. Congratulations to those gentlemen. I know that was a tough changeover and moving the entire company to your new facilities. So congratulations on that. Also be sure to check out the What's Neat This Week video podcast, where we have folks just like Microengineering on to keep you updated on what's new in the hobby with special guests, a lot of special presentations, sometimes a layout tour, a lot of neat stuff. So check it out. And with that now, let's continue on with the rest of this May 2025 What's Neat. this segment of What's Neat, I want to describe an interesting photographic project that I had done for the 2025 Bachmann catalog cover. Now, this photo was to feature the brand new Dreyfuss Streamline New York Central Hudson locomotive, an absolutely exquisite model that I didn't have when I got the assignment. The model was going to come later. My assignment, and I'm going to show you this on a tablet, I'll probably maybe put this on the screen, was to replicate this beautiful painting. Okay, there's a lot of drama in that. There's a lot of things going on, but as you can see, the Dreyfuss Hudson is the star of the show. And so I looked through my prototype books, and I found the prototype location in one of the photos. And it didn't quite look as dramatic as the painting. As you can see, that monolithic building in the background in real life appeared a lot smaller than the appearance of the same structure in the photo that I was to replicate. So my job was to lay the photo out prospectively the best I could without the featured product models. I literally did it on the workbench top over there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through some of the process of what I did to put together this set, because the only thing that mattered was what the camera saw. So everything else, prospectively, simply had to be built with the camera set up in place to match the prototype photo that we were copying. You've seen me do this in the past, but this photo came out really, really, really good. So let me walk you through the process, and let's enjoy this little adventure as we create some more beautiful model railroad art in this, the best hobby in the world. So I literally laid out the scene on the workbench in the shop. Important things to figure out was what size piece of foam would I need? How big is the scene going to be? What's the length the track's going to be? How am I going to get the large building, that monolithic building in the background, to be tall enough to look appropriate to match the prototype photo? Not so much the prototype photo, but the artistic rendering that I'm copying. So here I am putting the video camera down in place. I've got a streamlined Broadway Limited engine and a couple other Bachmann engines, various engines to take the place of the actual actors when I get the actual models to build the scene. So I'm going to need 4 rows of, I think I have 5 rows of easy track is what I figured out, in order to replicate the angles of the rail and the way everything looked in the artistic painting that I'm copying. So I'm going to shoot this outside. So all the buildings now are just in place to give me an idea of what I need to do to fill in a background, what size foam sheet I would need, and now we're off to the races to start doing the scenery. To create the monolithic building for the background of this scene, I used one of the Bachmann kits that they had come out with when they came out with their cityscape buildings. I think they came out around with these around 1999 or 2000. In fact, I did the original box art for this kit a long time ago. I shot the outdoor photos. So I never actually built one before. The models I had were pre-built. So I learned a thing or two about building the structure. A little bit of filing to get the parts together. You're essentially building a bunch of flat pieces and then assembling the structure once you get all the flat walls built. I put a lot of tape in there for the blinds, for the window shades and what have you, to create that effect so that when you look at the building from the outside, it does look like there's some occupancy in it and not just a bunch of blanked out dark windows. I did notice about the kit that some of the windows are actually built open, in the open position. So you've got to pay attention really careful to which direction you put the windows into the building. I didn't know that. But yeah, this was a really neat kit. Like I said, again, here's the box. I'm showing it to you right now, where I shot the photos and did little street scenes and what have you on the Midwest Valley Modelers layout a long time ago. But it created this beautiful building that I get to work with once again in order to create this cover photo for Bachmann. So it was really neat to actually dive into it and actually built it. So I simply glued it all together. And then this thing came out really neat because I lit it up. I put some lights underneath it just to see what it would look like lit up. I thought it would look neat in the shop, and it made for a really neat video clip. But with that building built now, it's time to get busy and start doing the track work and the scenery on this scene next. So I started laying out the scene onto a sheet of foam. I painted the foam dark, as not to be pink. And I had to use, of course, Bachmann Easy Track because it's the Bachmann catalog cover, and obviously they manufactured this beautiful track that I created an ad for about 20 years ago that's still a great ad. Fantastic to lay it all out on the scene. The three main sections were just simply straight. That was a beautiful thing. I'll put a piece of wood on top of that to weigh it all down. I'm using Great Foam Pro to glue this material, to glue this onto the... And if you look, this track that I'm putting down is actually at an angle because in the artist picture that I'm copying, it appeared that the artist took a little liberty to change the dimension of things and move things around so that all the tracks weren't necessarily parallel in order for the shot to fit his painting. So I'm doing the exact same thing here using the track and the geometry that's required by using track. And see this, I don't even have to have a full section of track because anything beyond that first few inches is then not seen on camera. It'll be blocked by the Dreyfus Hudson. So simply gluing all of this down, and I'm going to skip through this at this point because I did put weights on top of it, a sheet of wood, so as the great stuff expands a little bit, and there is some expansion, it wouldn't raise up the track. That would be a nightmare and throw everything out of perspective. So once this dried, and of course I've got the rest of the buildings as you can see in the background, prospectively making sure that things lined up before I put the track in its place, you know, actually drawing lines onto the foam and then gluing it into place. So rock and roll, let's continue on to the next step, which is going to be painting this track. So I'm using Rust-Oleum camouflage brown paint, and I really honestly am concerned about the rail. I don't want the rail being all shiny and distracting otherwise from the subject of the photograph. I just want the track to pretty much be subliminal detail in the photograph. Of course I painted all of it so that when I come back and start to put down ballast onto this, it'll give a surface for the woodland scenic cement to adhere to, as opposed to just simply trying to ballast over the plastic slippery surface of injection molded plastic. So once I was satisfied that everything looked just right, we moved on to ballasting. So I'm using Woodland Scenic's light gray ballast to apply to this. There are times when I'm building a layout, I'll follow up the ballasting with camouflage paint just to weather the ballast a little bit or follow it up with an airbrush. But for this project, it was simply a matter of just getting a good even coat of ballast to fill in between the ties and between the sections of track so that the relief wouldn't be so deep in between, because in the photograph it's more level. Now I'm spraying on the Woodland Scenic cement. As you can see, some of the track isn't even ballasted because it won't be seen on film. But this is going to simply adhere to everything and hold it in place for the photo shoot. I use the same amount on this project as if I was building a layout. It's easily, cleaned off of the track after the project's done if I want to reuse this track for something else. I've got the rest of the buildings laid out in the background, as you can see. Again, just to fill in the background with subliminal details for the background. The steam engines and the trains are going to be the subject, the buildings, and the track is subliminal detail. So after this dried, I was pretty much ready for a sunny day and set up and start shooting this thing outside. And I did multiple shoots with it. I will show you this video here where I've got it all set up. This is one of the days where I shot. I shot it on sunny days. I shot it on cloudy days to create different atmosphere so that the production crew at Bachmann Industries would have something to work with. I'm using a flashlight to fill the side to use as bounce light. I'm also using a big reflector too to add bounce light to light up the side of those engines, because as you can see, this time of the year, I shot this photo right around January, the first week of January. The sun is very low where I live, and I've got to deal with the sun angle that I've got to work with. All the buildings, again, are subliminal detail for the background. They moved around, things changed here and there as I was doing the shot over various days. And now I can show you how the final shot came out. So let's go ahead and do that clip. Here we are, it's shoot day. It's the day that all the pieces come together. And I feel a great deal of pressure that's been lifted off of me in the fact that I've already done this photo shoot. Everything has come out just as it was designed. I did try a few different angles on this, but overall, this reminds me of something that I would have done back in 1999 when I was shooting these buildings. I believe I shot these buildings for Bachmann Industry, the big tall building. I did the box art for that with all the buildings that came out at the time. And it's really neat to actually have to have built one. I've never done it before. It took 9 hours, but it turned out really decent. The feature locomotive, that beautiful New York Central Streamline. When I put the reflection on this, it just lights up the locomotive. I also used a flashlight to light up the driver's rods down. Passenger car, the beautiful Hudson on the other side of the locomotive. It's just a beautiful shoot. Bunch of buildings just thrown around in the background to act as props. It could be redundantly redone in Photoshop. There's going to be a lot of photoshopping on this photograph to create the fog, the smoke, and all the different effects that were in the prototype painting that we're trying to emulate here. But overall, I would say this was a successful shoot. It only took 9 hours, 1 day to build the building, essentially. And sheet of foam. Foam's increased from $28 to $59 a sheet. That's crazy. But yeah, a bunch of buildings that are just laying around in the basement. A lot of these buildings became part of articles, like this brewery here, Kit bashing 2 Walther's breweries together. That was a beautiful shot for Mainline Modeler. Spent weeks on that project, weeks. And then miscellaneous other buildings, just again, as a convoluted background of substructures, because you couldn't just shoot it with one building. It'd have to have a lot of other stuff just kind of around it. Subliminal details is what I like to call it, because it'll kind of sort of blur out as the focus becomes soft. I'm not using Helicon focus on a shot like this because I want the background to become soft. The subject, again, is the trains in the foreground. That's sharp. That looks decent. But rock and roll. Bachmann 2025 cover. I can show you what the picture looks like that I shot out here right now. And then if this video works out as planned, here is the final shoot after Bachmann did all of their beautiful magic on this shot. So rock and roll. That concludes this segment for What's Neat. For this segment of What's Neat, I am standing in this part of the layout again. How many videos have I made through the years standing in this spot and changing this scene? Well, continuing on now from where I left off in the corner, working on cutting the layout down so that I'd have more access to it, and then figure out exactly what I want to do. Now, I would say that the planning for this isn't so much for scenery, aesthetically, as it is for functionality of moving trains. The way I've seen that we've been running this layout for the last 10 years. With the show and different visitors coming over, it's a show layout. It's really a demonstration layout where people come and run their trains, or I run trains and enjoy watching them run for the run-by effect. So it's not an operational layout, so to speak. So it's really about moving trains efficiently and adding the tracks that I've discussed in the previous section, which we're going to continue now, is what really is going to add to that fluidness of this. Now, I've drawn this on a piece of cardboard, the corner of the room, because the one factor that I can't move is the stack. That plumbing stack will dictate the radius that I can do minimally clearance-wise, but yet I still want to make the biggest radius that I can up and beyond the 48-inch radius that I've been using for years, which is very acceptable. But I want to push this, and by doing this measurement on this cardboard like this, where 1 inch equals a foot, I came up with the conclusion, in order to add 3 tracks through this curve and go with the widest radius that I can, it's going to be a 62-inch radius on the inside track and about a 69-inch radius on the third track. Well, since I built the corner and pulled things out, it's been about a week. And I've decided that I removed the diesel locomotive facility that was here. It was a 2-track facility. And the tracks are all still here. And I think I'd like to put a train station there, instead of over by the window where I've talked about doing that previously in videos. Actually, Joshua's idea. It'll give me a great longer run. I could light this whole area up. It would really just change the dynamics of this part of the room. It'll be really nice. In order to do that, I've decided there's nothing here track-wise. The narrow gauge track, all of this has got to go. And the easiest way to do that is to cut this module about right where I'm standing right here. And that's at 8 feet. And just replace the whole top. That'll give me a new fresh canvas to work from. There's a lot of topography carved out into this. If I peeled up the track, it would be too difficult to grade it out smooth and make it operationally good. It'll be problems. So I've got a new sheet of foam here that's going to fit right into that space. Now, another thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to take this camera here and bring it over so I can show you this. The area over the sink is going to be 3 tracks, and previously this area was designed whereas a track in the rear dropped down below the layout and was going to be an under the layout staging yard, starting somewhere back in that corner and working around the basement. Then I built the narrow gauge stuff and I canceled out that idea, and what I did was I made the tracks go up. You can see the line on the wall where the back track actually went up. So what I need to do is take this cobbled bench work, so to speak, where it's bits and pieces added and changed over the years. Simply take the plywood off the top of this, remove the track, pull this plywood off the top of the metal stud. The metal stud is already about an inch away from the wall, so I don't want to go any further out. I need 3 tracks here, and clearance for 3 tracks, 7.5 inches would do well. So what I'm going to do is laminate the stud after I peel off the old plywood. I'm going to put this on, laminate it smooth and flat. I've got 2 sheets of this. I'll make it 7.5 inches wide. That'll buy me 3 tracks all the way through the area. The last thing is the passenger yard, or at least the passenger siding, to come into this train station, I believe should be long enough to hold at least 2 locomotives and 5 or 6 Amtrak cars, a typical consist that you would see around here in the Midwest. So the plan is, as you can see here, the turnout starts here. This is not long enough. I could fit 1 locomotive and 5 cars into the siding, and that would be tight. So the plan would be to start the passenger car siding further through the curve all the way as these main lines start to depart into the 62 and 69 inch radius. I can then put a turnout here and have that passenger siding. So there'll be actually 4 tracks running across the top 3/4 inch sheet of plywood. So all of this bench work can be removed, and the plywood will be just probably braced underneath with some dimensional lumber to keep it from warping. I picked up a beautiful sheet of plywood. I don't have that here to show you, but I can tell you that plywood right now with tax, 3/4 inch sheet of oak was $97. And I only need 6 feet of that. about 5.5 feet to start my radius curve, draw it all out onto the plywood, have it so that I'm coming in with 4 tracks into this diorama right here. And that should just be smooth. And then as the 4 tracks get into this area, I've taken some old turnouts that I've had in a scrap box, and I'm going to repair them where it's necessary, maybe spike down some wood ties here and there, but I'm going to salvage these very beautiful number 10 turnouts. So all the turnouts in this area will be like high-speed turnouts, so the trains will fluidly run through the area. I recognize it takes up space, but there's no other scenery elements that I'm really planning for this area other than a train station and a diesel, 2-engine diesel house right here on this little square end. Okay, so we'll have a passenger track all lit up with lights, a parking lot all lit up with lights, the building all lit up, a building here, a little 2-engine stall house for some switch engines, all lit up. This diorama, all of it will change. It'll be beautiful. So the process is going to be starting by ripping out all of the plywood here, pulling out all of these control panels, saving the switches, and then ripping off the top sheet of plywood. So I'm going to start shooting video and going through this entire process. I think we're going to go through about just under 80 feet of track, and I'm salvaging about 5 or 6 turnouts in order to do this project. And then when it's done, we'll have a really long 3 tracks coming right out of the switch yard over there, so I can park entire trains on them if I wanted to. It'll add a lot more dimension to the functionality of this layout, which again is kind of used just to run trains on and have fun with. So fluid yards is kind of the answer behind this redesign. So I hope I haven't bored you with this. I could have went on with what was here before. I actually planned to, but I'll do that some other time because there's quite a cool history of the last 30. It was 2002 when I started building this layout down here around these walls and got rid of that beautiful Midwest Valley Modelers modular layout. So let's continue on now with this and see how this whole thing transpired, because I really want to see some trains running. I think the best way to approach modifying this piece is to simply take it out and bring it over to the workbench, because I'm not going to be able to peel this plywood off the face of this because it's seriously glued on with the old-fashioned liquid nails out of the tube, which holds incredibly well. I've got all the screws out of this. I thought there was one in the middle. So this is an 11-foot long steel 2x4, 2 of them wrapped together to make a clamshell, which isn't, it just doesn't work, which is wonderful. So this whole piece is going to go out and go over to the workbench now and get this modified. So what I'm doing is I'm tearing off the top layer of scenery and the old plywood off of this stud. And so far it's coming up pretty easily here with the crowbar. I'm trying to be careful not to ruin the metal, not to dent the metal with this tool. So after removing the 11-foot long metal stud that was wrapped in oak, I've taken it in the shop and I've peeled the oak off the top of it. I've got another piece of oak plywood here, an old piece that's been in the garage for a long time. I only need 11 feet of this material. I'm probably going to take the center out of 2 of these boards where there's no warpage and use those to put on top of the metal stud that I'm going to put right back here in the place very soon, because it simply goes onto the brackets right here with 1 screw and it holds great. It's been like that for 15 years, so it's going to work. So I'm turning my attention to the other side here. This module, I've decided it's best to go ahead and remove the whole top off of it 8 feet. I've explained I've got a piece of foam right here to use to replace that section. So I'm going to cut it back. I pulled off the control panels and cut them off. In fact, it was just a Saturday night. The guys wanted to run trains, and I let them do that before I cut all this out. I also cut out the rail in this area. I'm not going to be able to save some of these turnouts, and I'm going to take a saw and slice it right at this line. That'll be 8 feet. So that'll give me a whole new surface to work with that'll be flat, instead of having all this topography cut into it, which is almost an inch from this top rail height of the main line as you go down to the lower tracks, which have been built lower for aesthetics, and then down to this creek down here. So the plan is, and I've got this steel saw. These things are so handy. These new little chainsaws that are hitting the market, battery powered, no cords. So I'm simply going to take this saw and just cut down into the lower first layer of foam all the way across. This thing is like a sawzall, you know, battery operated, no cords. The little 4-inch blade is perfect for that. A lot of brands make those. Milwaukee makes them. Here's a Milwaukee. Makita makes them. Ryobi makes them. There's a lot of different ones. Even DeWalt has one of these now. I like this Milwaukee because it's got a good 8-inch blade on it. And the other thing is it's very, very variable speed. So for carving foam, you know, that's a great low speed, which a machine like this has got so many uses. I'll bet it's absolutely changed the world of wood carving. Simply because, again, it's not a full-blown gas-operated chainsaw, which you'd never bring in the house. But it's perfect, again, for carving foam. So I'm going to use that to cut that over there and simply take off the top layer. Now, this top layer has been added onto over the years because this diorama used to be narrower, and I've added it on to make it wider at some point about 2010. So I'm not sure what to expect with regards. I don't think this will come off as one big piece. I have cut all the turnouts with a Dremel right at the rail joiners so that I can attempt to save these turnouts, but I'm also ready to be able to just take a putty knife and scrape one up if I need to, if the foam happens to break at one of those spots. The most important thing now is to get this off, get a new top glued on completely level, and then we will continue on with cutting the very large sheet of plywood, the 6-foot by 4-foot section, with the very long 69-inch radius curves built into it to support all 4 tracks that are going to be coming off of the 9-inch piece of wood. So a lot of different things here, but it's actually going very quickly. This is just construction 101. So I'm going to shoot some video of some of the process of this live, so you can just sit down here and see how this goes. If I make a mistake or screw up, we'll all laugh together over coffee and get this job done. One additional note before I cut this. The idea to put a train station there, the scene was never designed for that. And in order to accept, again, a passenger train of, say, 7 cars and 2 engines, just an average Amtrak, I want us to move the station, instead of being in this area, slide it down further this way. And the problem was, because of the angle of the rails coming off of this curve, it's putting me really close to the wall, or closer to the wall. If I can move that end of the rails down there on the very end, out about 1.5 inches, it'll buy me another 1.5 feet of space that I could slide this station down the diorama before it hits the wall. And the reason for that is this footprint of this Wathers train station basically fits a great number of different types of train stations. So what I'll do is I'll take the base off of this model and make it so that just the brick itself will sit on top of either plexiglass or that cement material that I love to use for roads, and we'll build a nice long passenger platform on either side of the station and light that up with lights, and it'll give me additional space to slide, like I said, the station down this wall. centering it better so that there's the engines up front and the baggage car gets past the station, and then the passengers and the passenger cars could get off. It'll center it by moving the main line away from the wall. I'm pretty sure I can afford another 1.5 inches. And so what I'm doing is I'm marking everything down on the actual plywood base, because once this top layer is gone, my reference is going to be gone. And I was using this 8-foot level as a straight edge so I could understand the dimensions as I pull away from the wall. These are all things that could be eliminated if you simply drew it on paper or did this on a CAD system. All your answers would be there. But I'm feeling my way through this project, which works for me. So that's where I'm at on this. I really am going to start cutting this now and just try to get this out. And I want to get this done. So here we go. What could go wrong? Well, there's a piece of wood on the back side of this. This module's going to have to be pulled out away from the wall. That is true. That is true. That is true. That is true. Okay, so I'm all ready to cut this. But before I do know one last thing that has kind of occurred to me until right now, and that is this diorama is laminated with plywood on the back, which is attached to the top layer of foam. So I really think before I proceed further, I need to pull this module out away from the wall. And I'm probably going to end up putting it on a cart and working on this in the shop. On the fly, that's how this is going to go. I can see that right now. Which is really easy. We've got one jack on this end that unplugs, and one jack on the other end that unplugs down there. And I can pull this right out. That's one beautiful thing about building the layout so that it can be moved like this. Because cutting this and working on this in the shop is going to make this project a lot easier, because I'll be able to get all the way around the module as I work on this. So this is a good thing. How convenient to be able to bring the module into the shop and be able to work on it from both sides. So as you can see, I've got oak on the back side of this module that goes against the wall. The purpose of the oak is to add structural integrity to the foam modules. Now this one is 3 layers thick, so it's probably not going to bend, But these do, and this one has been outside. I've made videos on it and shot a lot of still photos on it in the past before I put the narrow gauge on it. And it doesn't flex, it doesn't bend. So what I want to do is this. If I started ripping off this top like I was just planning on doing, you know, pull out the chainsaw and rip it apart. Okay, no, we're not going to do that. I'm going to take this saw and I'm going to just sink it in between the plywood and the foam and just make sure I've got a good clean cut so that the top layer of foam is going to come off clean, and I'll leave the plywood in place. And then when I put in the new layer of foam, I'll figure out what to do with regards to gluing it back in against the plywood. Same thing with this area that I wanted to cut right across here. I can tell you from the last module that you did see me cut, the chainsaw does not like this cement that we use for the roads. It's no reason to ruin it. So I'm going to go ahead and use the saw on that too and cut through as far down as I can go and probably finish it up really with a handsaw. And then peel off and start wedging in a crowbar underneath everything to peel it up. So being able to work on it here in the shop honestly is so much more effective than trying to work on it in place. So let's see what goes on next. Let's keep on going here and work on this. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting out the corner here. And that cement is going to ruin this blade. All right, just like that, this is cut. I'll finish it with a handsaw, a very fine handsaw. Now I'm going to work my way all the way down the length of this to remove that very top where it connects to the plywood of the foam I'm going to pull out of here. So here we go. So I'm making a final cut with a simple handsaw. I've run the electric oscillating sander with a cut blade on it all the way up. So I'm just going to do the final, just make sure I'm the right depth. All the way across. There we go. So, let's see what happens next together. Is I'm going to take a crowbar here let's see if this separates. This is going to be pretty straightforward. I'm wedging the crowbar into the foam. And this is going to take a while. Yep. Alright, I'm going to get a pair of a Dremel and cut off this track right here. Yeah. Okay, no, I'm not. There's no saving this track. So this is going to go right in the trash. I'm able to save actually two turnouts here that are 3 rail turnouts. So I'll save those and stick those in a box of turnouts. An interesting thing, this is a good point for me to make, about this cement material that I've been showing you that we've been using for years on the show. This stuff has been back here for, this is better than 12, 15 years old. And notice how, even it's dulling the saw blade when I cut it. Look how flexible it still is. It's not brittle. It's an amazing attribute of this latex cement that that I like to use to make these roads. So I'm going to keep crowbarring all of this out and clean this out and make a nice bed. See what we have underneath to work with here to lay the new sheet of foam right on top of. Okay, it looks like this one has come off in one whole piece. And I want to save as many turnouts, narrow gauge turnouts that I can on this. And also the sill floor grass tufts. You know, those are on all of these different dioramas. I don't want to lose those beautiful grass tufts because they're reusable, right? And what we're left with is an expose of the multiple different kinds of glues over the years that I've used. This diorama has changed its shape. In fact, you can see there's 4 inches that I added to the back of it at one time. This is where the original modules were against the wall when it was a smaller layout. This is what I added. I started using Great Stuff Foam Pro, the orange glue. So you got liquid nails, which eats cavities into the foam as it cures and sits there over decades or over time. And the Foam Pro doesn't do that. So I need to clean this up, smooth it out, make a nice smooth bed to lay the new piece of foam on. I'll spray down the orange Foam Pro, put weights on it, and let this set up. So using the photography roller cart from outside, I've rolled the module back into place onto the shelf. And I laid that piece of foam on top after clearing up and cleaning up the underneath side. So we've got a new fresh canvas to work with right here. Now I actually did use this little saw, and what I'm doing and what I just did is, and I've made a decision to cut off 7 inches where the main line's going to be. This is code 70 track here. And the diorama next to it also has code 70 track on it. But the new section that I'm laying all through here with all the turnouts, I'm using code 83 for most of it. I'm going to use code 70 for the inside secondary main line, so to speak, and probably for the engine house I'll use code 70 because it'll match my microengineering turnouts that I've got on hand. So at this point I'm going to take out this 7-inch section. I've already cut it straight down, cut right across my road. I'm going to crowbar out this piece and then lay a new piece of foam in here, which will give me a new subsurface to lay the track onto, instead of taking up this track and trying to lay fresh track onto a sort of semi-messed up, carved, who knows what, gouged subsurface. I'd rather just have a flat piece of foam and start over and carve my topography, which, you know, in essence will allow me to change this area. I've always loved this road here. I don't want to change the curvature of the road, but I may, if I'm adding a train station, put a row of buildings facing forward this time, just to light them up. Something that I saw in Tom Johnson's layout was he had a row of storefronts with pumpkins and different details all about it. And he had the tracks going behind it. And he told me on the phone one day, he said, I wish the tracks were in front of it. So I like the idea of putting the row of houses back here and then having my tracks right here on a road in front of it. I think it's going to lay out really kind of cool. And so at this point, it's time to simply glue everything into place and put weights on it and start working on the corner and the shelf along the sink. Okay, so this is the Great Stuff Foam Pro, the stuff I love to use. I probably put on too much. I don't need this much. It will hold this layer of foam perfectly with what I put on it. And I know that because I've been taking apart a lot of foam lately and finding out that this glue works really well. So I'm going to put this in place and put weights on it. Additionally, I've glued in another piece here that's 7 inches by about 26 inches long, so that all the new mainline trackage on this module will be sitting on top of new foam. So the only original part of the module was a very small corner over here, about 18 inches by 26 inches of scenery. So weights on top of this, let it set up. And we'll start working back on the other part of the layout over the sink area and get that area built next. Okay, so the module's now dry, everything's set up. I've put a coat of brown latex paint on everything just to seal the foam. So at this point, I've got some track. Microengineering is doing business. They sent about 280 feet of track, which will do this project and also help me build a new passenger holding yard, which is also in the works for this summer. So with that, that's going to be the end of this segment. Next month, we are going to continue to work on the rest of the area over the sink. I've got a lot of woodworking to do that I know is going to come out really nice. The section over the sink with all the trackage. Eventually we're going to get there, but it's a lot of fun. The process is very interesting to watch. So I hope you've enjoyed this segment of What's Neat, and until next time, happy model railroading in this, the best hobby in the world.
All of the products seen on this episode of What's Neat are available from Lombard Hobbies in Lombard, Illinois, or order online at lombardhobby.com. And by Broadway Limited Imports, the cutting-edge leader in model trains. Check out their website at broadway-limited.com. Bachmann Trains. Now that's the way to run a railroad. Check out their website at bachmanntrains.com.